Hello, friends. I just met with a coaching client who has been in my orbit for many years in the online therapist group. And I've seen him through many launches where I do all that free webinar stuff. And I was just so emotional about where he is in his practice. And I thought some of the things that we talked about might be helpful to all of you. So, when you're at a point in your therapy practice and the practice, that's Bella, is feeling like it is draining rather than sustaining you, there are some important things that you need to do to make sure that your business is supporting you. Most of us go into our private practice because we want more freedom and autonomy, and we know that the salary ceiling is higher than if we're working in an agency. And yet sometimes we end up running on that hamster wheel of seeing client after client after client and then billing late into the night insurance companies that pay us very low rates and or don't end up paying us at all. So I want to talk to you about when you get in that place where you're seeing more clients than you possibly have a well of empathy for. And you're working so hard that you're not even able to enjoy your life outside of therapy. Just four simple things that you can do to start making a drastic change in how your therapy practice feels for you. So the four things are, number one, I'm going to look at my notes. Get really clear about money. I'm going to tell you how to do that in an easeful way that's not overwhelming. Number two, get clear about your three next steps. I'll talk to you about how to do that. Number three, you've got to find or make time every week, even if it's just an hour, where you are actively working on those three steps. And number four, you got to get doing some emotional work around graduating clients. Typically, when we end up in this overwhelmed place, it's because we're taking whatever clients fall into our laps, not necessarily those clients who are an ideal fit for the way that we practice. And sometimes they're going to stay in treatment for a really long time just because it's comfortable, not because it's the best for them. And you feel that in your heart when you're working with them. And yet also you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings by graduating them when you are feeling like you're their one place. Okay, so we're going to talk about all four of those. I just wanted to give you a quick overview. Number one, getting clear about money. As therapists, we like to help people and we don't tend to want to think about math. So I want to make this super simple for you. If you go into your business banking accounts, you can export everything that you spent for that year. Do that and then divide it by 12. And now we have a rough estimate of your monthly business expenses. Do the same thing for all of your personal accounts. So you can get a rough estimate about how much you or your family is spending every month. This does not need to be perfect. And if you try to make it perfect, you're just not going to do it. So be okay with the rough estimate. That rough estimate is going to let you know how many clients you need to see per week and at what rate just to pay your bills. We're not talking about like getting down debt. We're not talking about paying for retirement. We just want to know, what do I need to be making at the minimum to be able to pay my bills? Okay. So that's the math that we're talking about. If you can get those numbers, your expenses, business-wise, your expenses, personal-wise, then we're going to have a way to start. The reason that this is important is because I think a lot of us get started in our private practice, and because we're afraid of or maybe not educated about how to market, we just sort of take financially whatever seems easiest and most available to us. And it may be Medicaid rates that are $47 for a 45-minute session. It may be, I won't get into the details, but rates that aren't going to sustain you. If you start looking at those numbers, let's say a Medicaid rate at $47, and you do the math, you start to quickly see how many clients you would have to see per week at that rate in order to pay your bills. This math makes it much easier for you to say no to clients who you can't afford financially to see. Because otherwise, if we haven't done the math and we don't see that, what we end up doing is seeing clients because we want to help them, but we haven't seen how much that hurts us or our family. And there are lots of resources out there for clients who can only afford a lower paying rate. It doesn't have to be in your private practice. Side note, it can be really helpful for you if you want to spend 2 hours on a weekend while you're watching Netflix, Googling the heck out of free or low cost resources for mental health care so that you can have all of that on a pad of paper and you can share it with folks. Because otherwise, you're carrying the burden of working in a broken system and facilitating that broken system because you don't want that person to suffer. All right, so money's clear. We know, like, yo, I can't actually see 77 clients, which is what I need to see at $47 an hour in order to pay my mortgage, right? As soon as you get clear about that, everything else gets easier. So do the math. Yeah. Number two, we have to think through what is the solution to the problem. And almost always, the solution to this particular problem is getting more of your ideal clients and more of your ideal clients at your ideal fee, or at least your good enough fee. Okay. And there's a 3-part strategy that you need to use for that. Sometimes we really need to focus on short-term wins. Sometimes we have the time and money, like the financial backup plan, to invest in medium-term solutions. And sometimes we have enough space to invest heavily in long-term. Typically, we're wanting to do all 3 at the same time. The fastest way, so short-term solution, the fastest way to get clients in the door is through relationships. People who know you, know your work, and trust you. So how do you build that if you don't have that already? Well, number one, most of you do have some of that already. You went to graduate school, you know fellow students, you know professors, you know internships, you know residencies. You tend to know people and they tend to know your work. So letting them know, hello, I'm in private practice and these are the people that I am focused on helping, can start to build up your referrals. Number two, you probably are overwhelmed with clients right now. Pick out 3 to 5 of them who are really your ideal clients and find out who else they're seeing. So maybe they're seeing an endocrinologist or a psychiatrist or a general physician or a chiropractor. Find out who those people are, and if there are ways that the work that those folks are doing can support the work you're doing in therapy. And almost always, the 2 things are interconnected. If somebody has high blood pressure and you're working on anxiety and stress, y'all should probably be talking, right? If somebody's in their 40s and a female or early 50s and they're having mood dysregulation, maybe need to be talking with their gynecologist or endocrinologist, right? And the typical way to do this is obviously get a release of information from your client. And then I just say, like, hey, I'm Amber Lyda. I'm a psychologist working with our shared patient so-and-so. In therapy, we're focused on these particular issues. I'm writing to find out if from the medical side of things, there are any things that you're seeing that may be contributing to the symptoms that we're working on in session. That's it. That's it. Now, what's cool about this is you're providing an exceptionally high level of care for that client. Should we all be doing this all the time? Yes, of course we should. Do most of us do it? No, right? We have no time. And we're also intimidated. So make it really simple. When you send that fax or however you get it to that provider, you can also include a separate page that's just a little bit about your therapy practice so that they know. And I would never solicit referrals because I think it just comes across weird. But I might say, like, these are the folks that I specialize in working with. The more specific you are, the more likely you are to get referrals. If you happen to see these people in your practice, let me know because I can create some free resources for them and just give you a QR code so that you can send them those resources. Some resources I might be able to create would include things like a mindfulness meditation for folks to listen to when they're doing their annual gynecological exam if they get anxious, right? Things like that. So we're offering a service so we would call this content marketing. We're offering a service that is scalable. We're not saying like, we'll come in and we'll talk to every one of your individual clients. Like nobody has the time to be able to do that. But if you can create a one and done sort of resource and they can give that to their clients who are your ideal clients, that QR code is going to take them to where you have that resource on your website and voila, they're now on your website and they're more likely to read some of the other tabs and maybe even sign up with you. So The first part of our three-part strategy here is the short term, which is building those relationships. I'm not going to call it networking. I'm not going to call it, finding referrals, because as soon as you approach it in that way, it starts to feel like quid pro quo-y and not genuine. So if you approach it in more of a high standard of care and service oriented way, it's going to come across better, and it's also going to feel better for you. It's a really nice strategy for introverts who don't like to do the schmoozy kind of networking. And then the medium term strategy is sort of built in here, which is providing content or content marketing, if we want to be fancy, to people or online that your ideal clients are likely to see, that are going to lead them to your website where they can get to know, like, and trust you better. So, step one, short term, build relationships. Relationships are the fastest way to get referrals, and really build the relationship. Don't just be like, I need clients and I'll refer to you too. That doesn't work. Number two, medium term, is doing some content marketing. So typically the reason that this works is, let's say that the gynecologist says to your client, says to a person who could be your client, sorry about that, I know this therapist and they're amazing. Okay, cool. That warms that person up a little bit. But if that gynecologist can also say, and here's a resource that they created that's free, you just click that QR code and you can see it. Now they're much warmer. They're more likely to schedule. They've gotten word of mouth and they've got to know you a little bit through your content. So that's a medium term strategy. Your long term strategy is making sure that your website is findable. Findable. Quick hacks to make sure your website's findable. Make sure you have a Google My Business page and that it links to your website. Go to that Google My Business page maybe once a month and make a little addition. Right now, they're really expanding what you can include on there, including like links to blogs and your social media and all of this stuff. So Google is the number one search engine. We want to please Google. So make sure you do a Google My Business page and that it links to your website. That will drive traffic there. You're also driving traffic by those QR codes that you're giving to the people who are treating your current clients. It directly sends people to a place on your website. The last and kind of longest term part of this long-term strategy is SEO. And SEO sounds super intimidating, but it's really not. Here's your hack. Here's how to do it easily. You're going to pick the headers and the subheaders. On the back end of your website, they're called H1 and H2, header 1 and header 2. All of those need to have words in them that pleases Google and your ideal client. Each page of your website will rank for particular keywords. So we're not looking for your entire website to rank. Every single individual page on there can rank. So the more specific you are on each page, the more likely it's going to rank. Here's an example. If somebody had in a header, therapy for anxiety. Okay, anxiety is a word people search. Therapy is a word people search. That's okay. Except that a lot of other people have those same words. So if you can get more specific and say therapy for anxiety in New York, whatever, some city and state, that's even better, because now it's even smaller. And most people are still searching by their city. So if you can pick a few cities where you know your ideal client is likely to be and include those cities in your header or subheader, chef's kiss. If you said help therapy for health, anxiety, and panic disorder in Melbourne Beach and Melbourne Beach, Jupiter, and all of Florida, right? That's even better. The more specific, the more likely you're going to be found. All right, so headers, subheaders. There's one more place that is kind of the easy place to get some keywords in your website, and that's going to be what's called alt text. When you have pictures on your website, in order to make pictures accessible for people who have visual impairments, you want words to describe what's happening in that picture, because their screen reader is going to read it to them. So we want, first and foremost, for those descriptions to be accurate so that it really does meet that criteria of accessibility. But you can put keywords in there. So maybe it's a picture of two people sitting across from one another, and you could say, a therapist specializing in cognitive behavioral therapy for health anxiety, treating a woman in her 40s in Naples, Florida. You can put those keywords in there, which is going to help Google to know who you are, what you do, and who you want to find your website. Okay? So we've covered getting clear about money, having a 3-step strategy to hit your goal of getting more ideal clients and at your ideal fee. We covered the short term, the medium term, and the long term part of that strategy. Now, great, you have a strategy, but if you're not working on it on the regular, it's not going to come to fruition. So you do need to find at least 1 hour per week where you're working on some part of this strategy. So literally get into your calendar right now and block it off as a recurring time that you're going to be working on this strategy. I might, because I like planning, have a piece of paper that gives me like short term, I am building relationships with my clients' current providers, and I would have those providers listed. I would list out the things that I might do for them. The more nitty gritty you get, the more you're going to know what to do when you sit down for that hour each week. You're going to be able to look at it and be like, all right, which one of these 10 things am I in the mood to do right now? Okay, I'm going to do that thing rather than having to come up with it on your own. Number 4, actively work on the emotional piece of graduating clients. So typically people that I see that are in this place have lots of clients, but they're not getting paid enough to be able to pay their bills. So they're working 40, 50 more hours a week, and they're still struggling to survive. The only way out of this is to be making more money per hour, both to get your finances where they need to be and to free up the time to actually have a life outside of your work, and to be able to stay in the field long enough to help the number of people you want to help, right? Alternatively, you're going to burn out. This is often going to mean graduating clients. Sometimes we hold on to clients because it's comfortable for them and for us. We know them. We know that perhaps we're not giving them the best of the best that they could be getting, but that it's hard to find a good therapist, and this is better than them having to go out on the quest. Free yourself from that bind. Number 1, you've done the math. You know how much you need to make per hour to pay your bills and take care of your family. Don't put people outside of your family ahead of your family in your priority list. You have to take care of yourself. Okay? You know the airplane metaphor. You got to put that oxygen mask on yourself first. And listen, you are not the only game in town. There are other resources out there. I know it's a pain to find them, but instead of spending your time for the next 3 years in therapy with this person who you're underserving, spend a few weeks finding quality resources for them and allow them to go to resources that are a better fit for them so that you have time to bring in clients and finances that are a better fit for you and for your family. I promise you it is worth the emotional work of doing it. I have had to do it. I hated it. It was hard to do. And the thing that really freed me up to be able to do it was finding the other resources. Even though that was a time commitment, it was what allowed me to let go. I hope that's helpful for you. That's 4 steps for you to get out of a survival phase of your private practice into a thriving phase. If you've got other questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments or reach out to me directly. Take care.